Hello, this is Cryptolyze. I hope you are well. This Wednesday, 22 November 2023. We meet today to talk about crypto and only crypto because we had big news yesterday. We're going to talk about CZ. We're going to talk about Binance. We're going to talk about what's actually going on in the USA and why Binance had to pay $3 billion in fines and why CZ is leaving Binance. It starts right away. As a reminder, you always have the possibility of having free access to the educational course, which is a 60-hour training course worth €400, which allows you to learn blockchain, crypto, investment, technical analysis, trading, everything to become profitable. Through 130 videos, 400 pages of guides, quizzes to find out where you are in your progress, and all for free. To have access to this lifelong training, simply use the platform of one of our partners. Everything is explained in the comments and descriptions. We're going to come back a little to the Binance SEC USA story. So, it's not new, it's already been the case. Binance was attacked several times by the American authority on the fact that it was not necessarily regulated, despite the fact that they subsequently set up Binance US. And then there was the notion of money laundering and not segregating funds between user funds and platform funds. And that is very, very important. And generally it is directly linked to the notion of money laundering. And GT, a mix which is being carried out, it is very complicated to be able to raise the funds, especially you can imagine in a crypto exchange which is totally centralized, in which we have no visibility, and which owns its own blockchain. So obviously we had difficulties, we know that it had been going on for some time, and these were facts that dated back to 2018, 2019, 2020, and GT, and we actually had this trial which was gradually building to a crescendo with very strong pressure being placed on Binance US, to the point that Binance US hardly existed anymore. There was hardly anyone left. The CEO had left. We had some big executives who had left. And just a few days ago, we had news again that the person who was in charge of money laundering, of the management of money laundering, therefore of the fight against money laundering, of money had resigned in any case, had been thanked. And it was a certain number of cases, in fact, like that which had already left Binance from the entity for some time, and that did not fail. We had therefore the conclusion of this standoff in which we have a proposal from the American state for $3 billion to pay in fines to resolve the situation, and not only that, the departure of CZ and a certain number of other things that we're going to discuss later, so it's very important. And that's it. Is more interesting, we had on the 18 November a post from CZ on the departure of Sam Altman on OpenAI. And we see that now it's the same thing at the level of CZ. The tweet he made explains a little why he leaves, how, who is behind him, etc. And above all, he says, don't go and do FUD on user funds. Everything is there. The platform works very well. It's just me who takes a back seat to what's happening, and I take responsibility all the consequences. Which are linked, and I like it. There are a certain number of reactions which consider that CZ will not go to prison. So that remains to be determined because we still have a lot of things that will happen. What is already certain is that 1. We have the end of the proceedings against Binance, therefore against the payment of the lover, so that is a good thing. Next to it we have Binance, which will be under American supervision for 5 years. And Binance can no longer operate in the USA. This is really very important. Binance can no longer operate in the USA, at least as it currently stands. This really hurts the platform, although Binance US had already contracted its operations enormously. Nevertheless, we know very well that there are a certain number of users who did not go through Binance US to go through Binance. So we are going to still have a lot of things that will be restricted, and we have appointed, in any case, CZ has appointed Richard Tang as CEO of Binance, and to know that he will be Mr. Regulation and Mr. Regulation. Because there, it is important to understand that to be able to return to the USA and to be able to continue to practice in the right conditions, we will have to regulate ourselves at some point, and therefore we must understand that for 5 years, the USA has the takeover of Binance, of all the accounts, of what is happening, of monetary transits, of absolutely everything. And that is huge, and that is what the American department wanted anyway. It is not didn't want to have a foreign actor who gravitates in its ecosystem, which involves so many billions, understand that FTX next to it was small. So here we are, really in an actor who is truly the leader of crypto exchanges, and therefore now who is becoming under control. So we are going to address several points because it is important to understand what this means for the crypto market. First of all, why did the USA do this, and how is it possible for them to do this? It's common, it's not something that is shocking. So as not to talk about it in the USA, we must understand that from the moment we use the dollar, we are under American jurisdiction. And that inevitably, when we sell and we buy cryptos against the dollar, that means that any transaction is linked to the dollar, and therefore any transaction is linked to American regulations and jurisdiction. So by default, any transaction in dollars falls within their jurisdiction, and that does not, don't miss it. The USA is therefore putting pressure on itself to be able to establish its jurisdiction. We do not forget that it is a form of economic warfare that we have already had for some time. That the USA is putting regulatory pressure on itself. It's not for nothing. It's to gain control over certain entities. In this way, understand that this is really an economic war tactic, and that will not change. It's the same principle I explained to you almost over a year ago now, that it's one of the principles in the USA, that is, we say come and settle in the USA, we don't regulate, don't worry, everything is going well. Once everyone is implemented, presto, we regulate and tighten the screw very hard, and we actually directly regain control over everything that is happening, and that is exactly what happened. So what does this mean for CZ already? CZ, you have to understand that there is the platform, okay Binance, but next to it, CZ owes $175 million to the USA, and then will have to return to the USA to see his sentence. So his sentence, there is a deal which is more or less done. It cannot exceed 18 months, and it is in fact possible that CZ will serve time in prison in relation to the different actions that there may have been at the level of Binance. And at the same time, once again, we were aware that there were side steps that were being taken, because when you have an expansion such as Binance and other exchanges, there is necessarily in fact a part of compliance that we totally forget, a part of regulation that we totally forget in order to be able to progress quickly and cannibalize market share. And this is actually the best way to manage the Binance case, is to go through the box, I pay my fine. I step down from my position as CEO, and that nevertheless I will be someone excessively influential in the field of crypto that will not change to the point that even Bloomberg is talking about it, because it is one of the biggest fines that have arrived. And for me, the problem is this title in which we combine terrorism and $43 billion, which means that we could say that there were as many monetary transactions as there were transactions, even though the difference between the two still remains very, very small. Concretely, what is happening to cryptos? We're not going to hide. We're going to look at the BTC prices. It's moved a little, but it's relatively weak because, in this case, it's the best way to do it. It implies that Binance has the right to exist. This implies that we have a framework that is arriving in this way. And I think that these are elements that are essential to be able to continue at the crypto level. On the other hand, we are not going to hide the fact that the BNB took a hit, but still maintained the $200, something which is quite extraordinary. On the other hand, there is one who is very happy. It is Coinbase. We are not going to hide it, that we have had a big acceleration behind. Clearly, the crypto market has resisted this news. It is news anyway in all cases, which is not the worst. It is not bad news. It is not good news. There's good and bad. It's more of a dovish short story, as one might usually say. Especially since at the same time we have other news that has fallen, that there was a meeting between BlackRock and the SEC on the potential validation of ETFs and the way in which it will be validated. We also have news on the Grayscale ETF, which is also in the process of transforming. And so it is moving in the right direction, namely that Grayscale considers that they will enter the market with almost $20 billion directly in assets, which is rather positive. So there we have a mix of good, bad, and less average news, that's it. So we will go directly to the graphic part with BTC. With BTC in general, we will not do the macro today. Clearly, We see that we have our candle in CME, which is in the process of compressing, or even going a little red on a weekly view. Very interesting to see that the market does not react much, or even very little. When we see the volume, we have a small volume feedback, but it is relatively weak. We have the 1-1 objective, we haven't broken the 2 fuse last weekend, so for me we are still in something which is rather structuring. We can clearly see that we have hardly moved, and the closer we get in a short time frame, we see that we are still in this big range that we have had for a while, and in which we can also see that we did not break this low. We did a retest. Yes, we had spoken precisely about being in a form of compression, and that we were certainly not going to break this lot, and that we were going to start increasing again to work again. And we see that even there, we had a big period of instability here and jeet, with the announcement effect, and then we have a form of digestion which takes place. And there we are in a retest of the digestion wick. So for me, we'll have to see. I think we can retest this 35,000 part, and I think it's going to be news that's going to be more complicated to digest, and that it's going to take time. We are not in an FTX dynamic. We are in something that is different. We are in dovish, so that means neither good nor bad, and that the crypto market will have to adapt, because that means that the biggest exchange is under American control. That means a lot of things in terms of regulation, in terms of the notion of OFAC. Don't forget all the controversy that there was with mainly the Ethereum nodes, which were OFA compliant. And are we going to have the same thing compared to BNB? Will this impact the BNB chain? Is there just Binance? In fact, there are lots of elements that come into play, and what will happen to all the cryptos that have been through the launchpad? From Binance. And there you have it. We don't just have one piece of news telling the FTX it's over. No, we are in something that is much more complex than that in terms of real impact on cryptos. And I think that the market will put time to digest it. When I say it will take time, of course, it doesn't mean taking time in crypto time. It means a few days, even a few weeks to react. In any case, what is certain is that we have a Thanksgiving, which is not going to be the same for everyone, especially if we have to have an element which breaks the 35,000. There, which is certain, is that we still have a large part of liquidation which took place. We have a classic retest to reduce the levers, and we have a possibility of a second bearish breakout for a second wave of liquidation. For me, in any case, at the order flow level, we see several things. It is that we have here the open interest, which is in the process of collapsing. So that means that we have indeed liquidated a large part of the longs. In any case, we had seen them in Kingfisher yesterday. And what I also see is that in terms of the positions of the top trader, we are sinking. So that means that we are either pressing on shorts or cutting his long ones, part of his long ones. And if we look at a small and GT, a little more, here we see that we have a strengthening on the hit map of the liquidation vectors, which are at 38,000. We have liquidated part of the positions which were at 36,000, therefore large blocks that we had built throughout this upward acceleration. We are really in a dynamic of continuous liquidity gain. So we are reinforcing the existing bias. Yes, but if we look carefully on Kingfisher, we actually went to look here for all the liquidity pulse that we had defined yesterday and got. Seize the CVDs which have collapsed. Totally agree. The 2 CVDs in which we had a divergence have gone low. And so we see here the breakout, and the 2 have made lows. And that is really very important. That's it. It is recorded. So that means that the market is less and less aggressive. We have less and less market order. So that means that potentially we could in fact go and retest the lower parts hop. We are going to get back here on this graph, and we are going to zoom out, in which we had our theory from yesterday. And since overall this beginning of the week and the establishment of this movement, go and retest this zone. So from 34,000 to 33,200, in which we have not lack of liquidity. And there we will have to monitor, do we have a return to, or are we in a retest of the bearish breakout? Because here we are in the middle of Ren. So that would imply that we would go for the lower part if we ever break this lot, that there is a high probability in GOT. Let's blow this one up, okay? There, for me, if we break this one, we blow up this one to get precisely the lower part. And there we will have our 2 zones that we defined yesterday to potentially see a structuring, an accumulation. Once again, depending on what is going to happen, because we can have 2 scenarios. We could have here, why not? The news tomorrow of validation of the BlackRock ETF. A very bullish reaction. Then after a reduction in the candle and GT, which will classically take place on this typology of news in which we have high volatility, especially since we have a compression of liquidity at the BNB level that is sure and certain. And there it is, the first possibility, therefore, a rupture at the rise, okay? But the second possibility would also be a downward break, in which here we would have a liquidation cluster in this part, and we would go to re-ester the 31,000 zone that we had with the bullish break here, which is the vacuum zone in GT. Absolutely at the level of this imbalance at the market level, so in both cases we will have to, above all, not overreact. Especially if we break bearish, we should not try to buy a falling knife. We will have to be very, very careful, and the same if we ever have a bullish break. Imagine that we have a big pulse of liquidity at 38,000, so if we are ever going to retest the 38,000 on that, if I have my helmet the 38,000, we will have a cap of champagne which will rise and which will certainly rise and got. At 41,000. We will have to be very careful and not short and fuel this short squeeze which will take place at that time in this bullish acceleration. But in all cases, we must understand two things. One, the market has quite little reacted to this news, and that is a very important element. And I think that we will discuss it in our weekly, because it means a lot of things for the implementation of the next bull run and the preparation of the market for this typology of news. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If so, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment. It always makes me very happy. And don't forget that we'll meet on Sunday 20 live on YouTube to celebrate the channel's 2 years. There will be lots of surprises. So don't forget, Sunday 26th November 20, and we will meet at 13:30 for the analysis of a surprise crypto.